The hotel keycard, sleek and metallic, clattered onto the kitchen counter. It wasn't mine. Beth Ann's face drained as I held it up, the Madison logo glaring under the fluorescent light. "Found this," I said, flat. Her eyes flickered, then narrowed. "You're still young, Hank. You need a reliable man." The words were a knife, twisted. My world shrank to that small, ugly space. Hank Miller, a safety engineer, returned home early, a quiet unease settling in. He found his wife, Beth Ann Peterson, visibly flustered within the confines of their bedroom. The unfamiliar scent of a musky cologne hung heavy in the air, clashing with their usual domestic smells. Two champagne flutes, still damp, rested conspicuously on her nightstand. Beth Ann fumbled with the buttons of her silk blouse, her lipstick slightly askew, a detail Hank noticed immediately. Despite the crisp November air outside, the bedroom window was slightly ajar, inviting a chill. Hank's gaze systematically took in the rumpled bed sheets and the faint, fresh lipstick stain on one of the glasses. Beth Ann stammered, offering a weak excuse about not expecting him, attempting to blame it on a nap. His trained mind, accustomed to identifying discrepancies and risks, began meticulously cataloging the evidence. He questioned her calmly, his voice even. "Who is here, Beth Ann?" She responded defensively, accusing him of paranoia while smoothing the duvet with practiced movements. Hank pointed directly at the champagne glasses, and Beth Ann, in turn, lashed out, accusing him of spying. He bluffed, mentioning seeing receipts in her purse, and her immediate visceral reaction confirmed his suspicion. As he reached for the purse, Beth Ann lunged, her voice sharp. "Don't touch me, Hank." Her phone chose that precise moment to ping, displaying a damning message preview. "Chad, when can I see you again?" Hank then emptied the contents of her purse, revealing a VIP hotel key card for the downtown Madison. His voice flat, devoid of inflection, he remarked, "The Madison has nice champagne, I hear." Beth Ann's composure utterly collapsed, swiftly replaced by a hardening mask of defiant anger. The early November afternoon felt colder than it looked through the windshield. A last-minute meeting cancellation had sent Hank Miller home 3 hours ahead of schedule. He was a safety engineer for the county, his mind trained to spot irregularities, to dissect a scene for potential hazards. It was a skill that served him well on the job, and one he rarely turned on his own home. Today, though, a low hum of something being off had started the moment he pulled into the driveway. The living room blinds were drawn, which was unusual for Beth Ann. She liked the light. He pushed the front door open, the silence inside too deep for a weekday. Usually there'd be the faint sound of the television, or Beth Ann's music playing in the kitchen. Nothing. He walked through the quiet hall, his work boots thudding softly on the polished hardwood. The air thickened as he neared the bedroom, carrying a scent that wasn't hers, wasn't his. It was a musky, somewhat spicy cologne, heavy and foreign. He found Beth Ann in their bedroom, standing by the dresser, her back to him. She was buttoning her silk blouse, but the buttons didn't quite line up. Her movements were jerky, a nervous energy radiating from her slight frame. Her usually neat blonde hair was a little mussed, and when she turned, her lipstick was smudged just outside the line of her upper lip, as if applied in a hurry. The window, cracked open a few inches despite the sharp chill outside, let in a thin draft. He glanced at the nightstand on her side of the bed. 2 empty champagne flutes, still bearing faint rings of condensation, sat there, gleaming in the weak afternoon light. "Hank," she said, her voice a little too high, "I wasn't expecting you home so early." She gripped the front of her blouse, her eyes wide. "I was just taking a nap." He didn't say anything, just stood there in the doorway, observing. His eyes moved from the flutes to the rumpled bedsheets, which bore the distinct imprint of more than one body, then back to Beth Ann, who wouldn't meet his gaze for long. He saw a faint, fresh smear of pink lipstick on the rim of one of the champagne glasses. It wasn't the brand she typically wore. His safety engineer's mind, accustomed to risk assessment and evidence collection, began to click. Every detail was a data point, every anomaly a red flag. "Who is here, Beth Ann?" Beth Ann, he asked, his voice calm, flat. He knew the question wouldn't yield a direct answer, not yet. She scoffed, a brittle sound. "What are you talking about, Hank? You're being paranoid." She walked over to the bed, tugging at the duvet, attempting to smooth out the telltale creases. Her movements were frantic, ineffective. There's no one here. I told you I was napping. He gestured with his chin towards the nightstand. Then why are there two champagne glasses? And why does it smell like a department store perfume counter in here? He watched her face closely. Her head snapped up. Are you spying on me now, going through my things? Her voice gained an edge, an angry defensive tone. I haven't touched anything, he said, his gaze unwavering. But I saw some receipts in your purse the other day for a few things you usually don't buy, and for amounts that seemed a little high. It was a bluff mostly. He'd seen the purse on the kitchen counter, seen a corner of a receipt peeking out, but hadn't actually read it. Her reaction confirmed his suspicion. Her eyes darted to her large, structured purse sitting on the armchair near the window. A sudden, almost animalistic protectiveness flashed in her eyes. As he took a single step towards it, she lunged, positioning herself between him and the bag. Don't touch me, Hank, she snapped, her hand a white-knuckled fist. At that exact moment, her phone, which was lying face up on the end table next to the armchair, vibrated. The screen lit up, displaying a message preview that cut through the tension in the room like a scalpel. Chad, when can I see you again? It read. Her eyes followed his to the screen, and her face went slack, then pale. The anger drained out of her, replaced by a sudden, terrifying emptiness. He walked past her, ignoring her frozen stance, and picked up her purse. He upended it over the bed, and a cascade of items clattered onto the rumpled sheets. Wallet, compact, keys, lipstick, a few loose change, and a sleek metallic VIP hotel keycard. The logo was unmistakable. The Madison downtown. He picked it up, feeling the smooth, cold plastic in his fingers. He held it up between them, the gold emblem catching the light. The Madison has nice champagne, I hear, he said, his voice flat, devoid of any feeling. Beth Ann's carefully constructed facade shattered, collapsing into a heap of shame and fear. For a brief moment, her eyes brimmed, her lower lip trembling. Then, in an instant, the vulnerability vanished, replaced by a hard, defiant glint. Her jaw tightened, and she glared back at him, a cold, unwavering fury in her gaze. Beth Ann, losing control, finally confessed, Yes, I've been seeing Chad. She defended her actions, claiming Chad Anderson, her fitness director, makes me feel alive. Beth Ann then turned the accusation on Hank, asserting he suffocated her with his constant need for order and control. Hank's mind drifted back to the years he had spent supporting her dream, securing loans, and personally painting her first gym. She quickly dismissed his memories. That was years ago, Hank, and called his work talk boring. Beth Ann then asserted, Chad and I share a vision, implying a deeper, more profound connection. Hank, without a word, placed the hotel keycard beside the champagne glasses, remarking, I'm sure you share a lot of things. Her initial anger giving way to a more calculating demeanor, Beth Ann asked him directly, What are you going to do? Hank surveyed their bedroom, the life they had carefully constructed, now feeling reduced to ashes. He stated his clear intention, I'm going to pack a bag and I'm going to leave. Beth Ann immediately shifted tactics, pleading with him, Don't be dramatic. We can work through this. As she reached for him, Hank instinctively recoiled, echoing her earlier words, Don't touch me, Beth Ann. He proceeded to pack a simple duffel bag with a detached, almost mechanical precision, leaving the room without another word. Beth Ann's panic calls became distant sounds as he closed the door behind him. Hank eventually checked into a different hotel, deliberately ignoring her frantic, unanswered texts. The defiant anger that had hardened Beth Ann's face now splintered, giving way to a raw, ragged vulnerability. Her shoulders slumped. Yes, she choked out, the single word hanging heavy in the air. Yes, I've been seeing Chad. The confession, when it came, wasn't a surrender but a desperate justification. She looked at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears that never quite fell. He makes me feel alive, Hank. Live? The word left his mouth without conscious thought, flat and empty. She nodded, a frantic, jerky motion. You don't understand. You never did. You're always so regulated. Always about the numbers, the safety reports, the mortgages, the planning. It suffocates me. Your constant need for order and control. Her voice rose, gaining strength, tinged with a bitterness he hadn't fully heard before. He stood by the dresser, the empty duffel bag still at his feet. His gaze drifted past her to the framed photo on her nightstand. Their wedding day, 10 years ago, on a crisp October afternoon. She had laughed then, a genuine, unburdened sound. He remembered the long nights he'd spent painting the drywall in her first rented gym space, the smell of fresh latex paint and sawdust clinging to his clothes. He'd worked extra shifts, secured the second mortgage on their small house, believed in her dream when her own parents had scoffed. He'd gone over spreadsheets, helped her write the business plan, convinced the bank manager to give her a chance. That was his version of support, his way of making her dreams tangible. "That was years ago, Hank," she said, cutting into his thoughts, as if reading them. Her face hardened again, dismissing his unspoken recollections. "And your work talk, it's just boring. You never talk about anything real, anything passionate." "Passion," he repeated, the words sounding foreign in his own mouth. He looked at the VIP keycard still in his hand. "Chad and I share a vision," she continued, her voice gaining an almost spiritual quality, as if they were discussing a grand enterprise, not a sordid affair. "We understand each other on a deeper level." He walked over to the nightstand, deliberately placing the Madison Hotel keycard beside the two champagne flutes. The plastic clinked softly against the glass. "I'm sure you share a lot of things," he said, his voice flat, devoid of inflection. The words were a quiet, precise jab. He didn't raise his voice, didn't allow his face to betray anything beyond a dull ache. Her eyes, which had been fixed on the keycard, now snapped up to his face. The initial wave of confession and justification was over. A calculating look entered her eyes. The consequences, the practicalities, were now surfacing. "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice low, steady. He looked around the room, the cherrywood dresser they'd picked out together, the heavy forest green curtains she'd insisted on, the old armchair where he used to read on Sunday mornings while she slept in. The life they had meticulously built, brick by brick, now felt like a fragile structure reduced to ashes by a careless fire. It was all still here, physically intact, but hollowed out, empty. "I'm going to pack a bag," he said, his gaze settling on the duffel bag still on the floor. "And I'm going to leave." Her eyes widened. "Don't be dramatic, Hank. We can talk about this. We can work through this." She took a step towards him, her hand reaching out, a reflex perhaps, to mend or to salvage. He recoiled, a sharp, involuntary jerk backwards. Her earlier words echoed in his mind, and he heard himself say them back, a dry, guttural sound. "Don't touch me, Beth Ann." He walked to the closet, pulled down his old canvas duffel bag, and began to pack. A few shirts, a couple pairs of jeans, a toothbrush, his shaver. Each item went in with a mechanical precision, his hands moving without thought, detaching him from the weight of the moment. He didn't look at her, didn't speak another word. The silence in the room was suffocating, punctuated only by the rustle of fabric. When he was done, he zipped the bag, picked up his keys from the dresser, and walked towards the bedroom door. Beth Ann stood frozen by the bed, her face a mask of disbelief and dawning panic. He didn't turn back. As he closed the front door behind him, he heard her voice, a muffled, panicked cry, calling his name. It was followed by the frantic ring of his cell phone in his pocket. He ignored it. The drive was a blur. He found a different hotel, one on the outskirts of town, away from anything familiar. The air inside the room was stale, recycled. He checked his phone, 7 missed calls, a dozen texts. He laid the phone on the bedside table, screen down, its silent vibrations a distant, meaningless hum. Hank, focused on methodical crisis management, opened his laptop. He immediately began researching Chad Anderson, scrutinizing both his professional and personal online profiles. Chad's Instagram feed was a curated montage of shirtless workout selfies, generic motivational quotes, and numerous photos with Beth Ann. Hank noticed a recurring detail in pictures he'd previously overlooked. Chad's hand consistently rested on Beth Ann's lower back. A specific photo caught his attention, them toasting with champagne glasses at a gym opening 3 months prior. He methodically scrolled back through Chad's online presence, tracing his gradual integration into Beth Ann's business and their increasing interactions. 6 months ago marked Chad's first appearance in Body Sculpt's official promotional materials. 5 months ago, the first team-building retreat photo showed them together, slightly closer than others. 4 months ago, Beth Ann's workout attire and promotional videos became noticeably more revealing, a subtle shift. 3 months ago, Hank observed subtle touches, lingering glances, and a clear shift in their body language captured on camera. Hank's meticulous investigation confirmed a deliberate, prolonged affair, far from an impulsive mistake. He then delved into Chad's LinkedIn profile, noting his remarkably rapid ascent within Body Sculpt. Hank's analytical mind meticulously pieced together the intricate professional and personal entanglement. He made a crucial discovery. Chad had recently acquired a significant ownership stake in Body Sculpt. The deeper financial implications of Chad's calculated involvement in their lives began to surface, chillingly clear. The cheap, impersonal hotel room offered little comfort, but it offered solitude. The air conditioning hummed, a low, steady drone. Hank sat on the edge of the bed, the laptop warm on his knees. His mind, accustomed to compartmentalizing problems and finding solutions, had already moved past the initial shock and pain. This was a crisis, and he needed data. He needed to understand the scope, the timeline, the players. He typed Chad Anderson into the search bar. The results populated quickly. Chad Anderson, fitness director, personal trainer, entrepreneur. The face staring back from the screen was younger, undeniably attractive in a tanned, chiseled sort of way. Chad's Instagram profile was public. Hank clicked it open. A montage of images scrolled past. Shirtless, selfies in front of gym mirrors, flexing taut muscles. Generic motivational quotes superimposed over sunrise photos. And then, Beth Ann. Lots of Beth Ann. Hank's stomach tightened, a cold knot forming. In so many of the pictures, Chad's hand was there, always on her lower back, a casual, familiar gesture that Hank had dismissed before as professional courtesy, part of the fitness community. He'd seen them posted on Beth Ann's own business page, but never paid them much attention. He'd trusted her. One particular photo snagged his attention. It was from 3 months ago, celebrating the opening of Beth Ann's second Body Sculpt location. Chad and Beth Ann standing shoulder to shoulder, raising champagne flutes. Their heads were tilted towards each other, Beth Ann's smile wide and bright. He remembered that night. He had been home, nursing a cold, while she had gone to the celebration alone. He started scrolling back, methodically, tracing Chad's digital footprint, his integration into Beth Ann's business. Body Sculpt, 6 months ago. Chad first appeared in promotional materials for Body Sculpt, a fresh face, charismatic, leading a group fitness class. He was new, Beth Ann had said, a recent hire from a bigger chain, full of new ideas. 5 months ago, a team-building retreat photo. Beth Ann and Chad were in the front row, their arms linked, both smiling. Everyone else in the picture had space between them. They didn't. 4 months ago, Beth Ann's workout attire and her promotional videos. It wasn't overtly scandalous, but Hank noticed a subtle shift. Necklines a little lower, leggings a little tighter. She'd attributed it to keeping up with trends, he recalled. 3 months ago, the champagne toast photo, and then more videos, more photos, subtle touches, lingering glances. A definite shift in body language, captured in pixels and timestamps for the world to see, for him to dissect. Now, it wasn't a mistake, an impulsive moment of weakness. This was a deliberate, prolonged unfolding. A story told in high-definition images. His investigation moved to Chad's LinkedIn profile. Hank, with his engineer's mind, appreciated the clean, professional layout. Chad's career trajectory at Body Sculpt was impressive, almost too impressive. From head trainer to director of fitness operations in just 6 months. A rapid ascent, Hank thought, especially for a relatively new hire. Beth Ann had praised Chad's ambition, his drive, his innovative vision for the business. Hank had nodded along, pleased that his wife's venture was thriving. Now the professional and personal entanglement clicked into place. The pieces of the puzzle weren't just about infidelity, they were about something far more insidious. Hank scrolled further down Chad's LinkedIn page, past his glowing endorsements and skill sets. And then he saw it, under the experience section, a new entry, tucked away almost discreetly. Partner Body Sculpt LLC. His breath hitched. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the implications sink in. Chad hadn't just been sleeping with his wife. He had been quietly, expertly, integrating himself into the very foundation of Beth Ann's business. The business Hank had helped build and fund. He had invested in it, not just his time, but his money. The financial implications, Hank realized, were now just beginning to surface, cold and clear. Hank shifted his analytical focus directly to Beth Ann's business, Body Sculpt. He meticulously reviewed old financial documents, particularly the loan agreements he had personally helped secure. He vividly recalled their conversations about ambitious expansion plans and a series of sudden, significant investments in the company. Hank began cross-referencing Beth Ann's personal spending habits with Body Sculpt's business expenditures. He quickly uncovered glaring irregularities, substantial consulting fees consistently paid to a newly formed LLC, which he discovered was registered under Chad's name. The realization hit him. The affair was far from merely personal. It was deeply intertwined with their shared financial future. He remembered a recent, uncomfortable argument where Beth Ann had summarily dismissed his concerns about the business's escalating finances. Further digging revealed clear evidence of Beth Ann diverting significant funds from their joint personal accounts directly into Body Sculpt for vague expansion purposes. Hank's methodical approach painstakingly exposed a pattern of deceit that extended far beyond the confines of their marital bed. He began connecting the dots between Chad's remarkably rapid rise within the company and the grandiose vision Beth Ann had so passionately spoken of. A chilling suspicion formed. He now believed there was a deeper, calculated scheme to gain controlling ownership of her business. Hank meticulously began constructing a comprehensive timeline, chronicling both the financial and personal betrayals. He started compiling a detailed report, much like a forensic safety assessment, cataloging all the risks, damages, and compromised assets. The crushing weight of this dual betrayal settled over him, cold, heavy, and utterly calculating. He understood he could not confront them with raw emotion. He needed to be entirely strategic in his next moves. The glow of the laptop screen cast a cool light on Hank's face. He minimized Chad Anderson's profiles and opened a new browser tab, navigating to their shared online banking portal. Then to Beth Ann's Body Sculpt business accounts, which he still had access to from when he'd helped set them up years ago. The emotional punch of the affair had given way to a chilling clarity, a resolve born from betrayal. This was no longer just about a broken heart. It was about a hijacked life, a stolen future. He pulled up old financial documents, the loan agreements he'd personally signed, the ones he'd guaranteed with their home equity. He remembered the long discussions with Beth Ann about her ambitious expansion plans, the sudden need for significant investments she'd mentioned over the last few months. He'd asked about the specifics, about the return on investment, about the increased overhead. She'd brushed him off, calling him a worrier, telling him to trust her vision. He began cross-referencing Beth Ann's personal spending with the business expenditures. The rhythm of his fingers on the keyboard was steady, deliberate. He went back 6 months, then 8, then a full year. The pattern emerged slowly, then starkly. Large, round figures listed as consulting fees began appearing in the Body Sculpt ledger. These payments were consistent, monthly, and substantial. He traced the payments, following the digital breadcrumbs, and found they were routed to a newly formed LLC, Peak Performance Consulting Group. A quick search revealed the registered agent for Peak Performance Consulting Group, Chad Anderson. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. The affair wasn't just a clandestine rendezvous in a hotel room. It was intertwined with their shared financial future, a parasitic growth feeding on the very business he'd helped nurture. Beth Ann hadn't just been cheating on him, she had been siphoning their marital assets into a venture that benefited her lover. He remembered a heated argument from 3 months ago, just after the second gym opened. He'd voiced concerns about the rapid rate of expansion, the increased debt, the lack of immediate profit. She'd flared up, accusing him of being negative, of not believing in her. She'd even suggested he was jealous of her success. He dropped it, wanting to avoid a fight, wanting to support her. Now he found evidence of Beth Ann diverting significant funds from their joint savings account, ostensibly for body sculpt expansion. The transactions were marked ambiguously, disguised amidst legitimate business transfers. He saw withdrawals from their personal investment portfolio. Funds moved into body sculpt without his knowledge or consent. This wasn't just impulsive. This was calculated. Hank's methodical approach, honed over years of safety inspections and risk assessments, revealed a pattern of deceit that extended far beyond the marital bed. It was a methodical dismantling of their shared life, both personal and financial. He connected the dots. Chad's rapid rise within body sculpt, the significant stake he had acquired. The vision Beth Ann had spoken of with such fervor. It wasn't a shared vision. It was a carefully orchestrated takeover, with Beth Ann as a willing, perhaps unwitting accomplice. He suspected a deeper scheme, a plan to gain controlling ownership of her business, perhaps even to push Hank out entirely. He began constructing a timeline, an intricate web of dates and transactions, linking each financial maneuver to a corresponding personal interaction he'd uncovered on social media. The first consulting fee payment to Chad's LLC coincided almost perfectly with Chad's first appearance in Body Sculpt's promotions. The large withdrawals from their joint savings matched the dates of Beth Ann's increasingly frequent business trips Hank now understood to be prolonged liaisons. He started compiling a detailed report, much like a safety assessment he'd prepare for a compromised construction site. Risks identified, damages assessed, assets compromised. The cold, hard facts laid bare on the screen. The weight of this dual betrayal, personal and financial, settled over him, heavy and cold. It wasn't a wave of emotion, but a calculated understanding of the depth of their deception. He knew then that he couldn't confront them emotionally. That wouldn't work. He needed to be strategic, just as they had been. Hank contacted his lawyer, a quiet, no-nonsense man named Earl. He meticulously laid out all the evidence: the affair, the hotel key, the financial irregularities, and Chad's newly formed LLC. Earl calmly advised Hank on the complexities of marital property, potential fraud, and the strategy for a calculated divorce. Hank expressed a clear desire for Beth Ann to pay the price in a way that extended beyond a simple divorce settlement. His focus sharpened on the financial harm inflicted upon Body Sculpt and his significant past investments in the business. Hank began devising a precise plan, leveraging his engineering expertise to systematically undermine Chad and Beth Ann's venture. He recalled several overlooked critical details within the initial Body Sculpt loan agreements he had co-signed. Specifically, Hank identified a crucial clause regarding conflicts of interest or the potential misuse of initial seed capital. He decided to strategically leverage his extensive connections within the local business community, a network built over decades. Hank subtly initiated a campaign, quietly spreading rumors about Body Sculpt's increasingly unstable management practices. He deliberately targeted key investors whom Beth Ann had originally brought into the business through his own network. He further utilized his network to gather more detailed intelligence on Chad's past business dealings and professional history. Beneath Hank's outwardly calm exterior, a steely resolve for measured retribution steadily grew. He felt a faint flicker of control returning, a sense of agency amidst the pervasive chaos. His plan wasn't fueled by raw anger. It was about achieving what Hank firmly believed was justice. The next morning, Hank was in Earl's office. Earl was a man of few words, with thinning gray hair and a methodical way of listening that Hank appreciated. He had represented Hank's family through a few property disputes over the years, always with a quiet efficiency that got the job done. Hank laid out his meticulously compiled report, the timeline of financial and personal betrayal. He spoke in a steady, measured voice, detailing the affair, the hotel key, Beth Ann's confession, and then the deeper financial irregularities. The consulting fees to Chad's LLC, the diverted funds, Chad's rapid ascent and sudden stake in Body Sculpt. Earl listened, occasionally nodding, making sparse notes on a legal pad. When Hank finished, the office was silent save for the hum of the old fluorescent lights. "So Hank," Earl said, finally, his voice raspy, "this isn't just about a divorce anymore, is it?" "No," Hank confirmed. "She didn't just betray me. She used me. She used my money, my credit, my trust to build a business with him." I want her to pay for that, beyond just splitting assets. His voice was flat, but the words carried a distinct weight. He wasn't seeking revenge born of rage, but a meticulous unraveling of the injustice, a reclamation of what was rightfully his. Earl steepled his fingers. Marital property in this state is generally split 50-50. But fraud, especially financial fraud involving marital assets and a third party, that changes things. We can go after her for misappropriation of funds, and Chad for tortious interference with a marital contract if we can prove he knew about the marriage and actively facilitated the diversion of funds. Hank's focus was on Body Sculpt. I want to hurt the business, he said simply. It's the vehicle they use to do this. I want to undermine their venture. He remembered the early days of Body Sculpt, the endless paperwork, the stringent requirements of the small business loans. He'd practically memorized every clause. I remember something, Hank continued, thinking aloud. In the initial loan agreements for Body Sculpt, the ones I co-signed out to, there were strict clauses about conflicts of interest and about the proper use of seed capital, how it couldn't be diverted for personal gain or to benefit external, undisclosed parties without full disclosure to the bank and partners. Earl's eyebrows lifted slightly. That could be very useful, Hank, especially if Chad was benefiting financially from those consulting fees and his hidden stake, while Beth Ann was simultaneously diverting funds from your joint accounts and claiming it was for legitimate expansion. That smells like fraud to the lending institution. Hank had spent decades building relationships in the local business community as a safety engineer, inspecting everything from construction sites to factories. He knew the movers and shakers, the bankers, the investors, the whispers that could make or break a venture in a small city like theirs. He started formulating the plan. It wasn't about shouting from the rooftops. It was about precision, about leverage. He could subtly start planting seeds of doubt, spreading rumors about Body Sculpt's unstable management, its questionable financial practices. He knew several of the smaller investors Beth Ann had brought into Body Sculpt were friends of his, people he'd recommended to her, people who respected his judgment. He could target them. He could use his network to gather more intel on Chad's past business dealings, too. Who was Chad before Body Sculpt? Were there other questionable ventures, other rapid ascents? As Hank left Earl's office, the weight of the betrayal was still there, but now it was accompanied by a flicker of something else. Control, a sense of agency. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about justice, or at least what Hank believed was justice. He would make them pay, methodically, deliberately. Stay tuned to see how life's costly choices unfold. Hank initiated a series of discreet meetings with mutual acquaintances and investors. He subtly planted seeds of doubt, questioning Chad's financial integrity and Beth Ann's recent business judgment. His consistent refrain was just asking questions about the stability of Body Sculpt given recent changes. Word of his inquiries began to quietly circulate within their shared social and business circles. Consequently, Beth Ann started receiving worried calls from concerned investors and increasingly skeptical business partners. Chad's recently acquired significant stake in Body Sculpt soon came under heightened scrutiny. Hank, meanwhile, meticulously compiled a comprehensive dossier of all his collected evidence, organized with professional precision. He then sent an anonymous tip to a well-known local business reporter, discreetly highlighting potential corporate governance issues at Body Sculpt. Beth Ann eventually confronted Hank over the phone, her voice laced with fury, accusing him of deliberately sabotaging her business. "You're destroying everything I've built," she shouted, her voice breaking. Hank remained eerily calm, his tone level, stating, "I'm just ensuring transparency, Beth Ann." Like a safety audit, the pressure on both Beth Ann and Chad escalated dramatically as their professional world began to visibly shake. Clients started expressing noticeable concerns, leading to a measurable, albeit slight, drop in gym memberships. Chad found himself constantly forced to defend his position and his ambitious vision to increasingly skeptical partners. Hank felt a grim satisfaction observing the system of deception he had uncovered begin its inevitable, controlled failure. Over the next few weeks, Hank moved with a quiet precision. He didn't scream. He didn't threaten. He simply initiated discreet meetings. Coffee with John, who owned the dry cleaning chain and had put money into Body Sculpt. Lunch with Sarah, a real estate agent who had invested in Beth Ann's second location. Dinners with other mutual acquaintances, all of whom had some connection, financial or otherwise, to Beth Ann's burgeoning fitness empire. He would listen to their updates on Body Sculpt, offer polite encouragement, then, almost as an afterthought, interject. "Just asking questions," he'd say, leaning back, his expression neutral, "about the stability of Body Sculpt, given recent changes. You know, with the new partner, Chad Anderson, and Beth Ann taking on so much personally, just wondering if everything's as solid as it seems." He never made direct accusations, never mentioned the affair. He merely planted seeds of doubt, tiny, insidious questions about Chad's financial integrity, about Beth Ann's recent judgment, about the sudden rapid expansion. The whispers began. Small towns were like that. Words circulated, amplified by the network of people who trusted Hank's steady nature and pragmatic approach. They knew him as a man who always looked out for potential risks. Soon, Beth Ann's phone started ringing more frequently. Worried calls from investors, questions from business partners about Chad's credentials, about the rapid restructuring, about the sudden surge in consulting fees they were seeing in the quarterly reports. Chad's newly acquired stake in Body Sculpt, which had initially been seen as a sign of his commitment, now faced increased scrutiny. Was he truly a partner, or was this a hostile takeover in disguise? Hank continued to build his dossier of evidence. Each transaction, each social media post, each snippet of information was meticulously organized, cross-referenced, and filed. It was a file cabinet of betrayal, each tab representing another piece of their fractured life. Then he made another calculated move. An anonymous email sent from a burner account landed in the inbox of a local business reporter at the Midwest Ledger. The email was concise, factual, highlighting potential corporate governance issues at Body Sculpt, hinting at undisclosed financial arrangements, and suggesting the reporter look into the recent partnership changes in the source of funding for the new expansion. Hank knew the reporter, Laura Jensen, had a reputation for digging deep. A few days later, his phone rang. It was Beth Ann. Her voice was raw, laced with a barely controlled fury. "Hank, what are you doing? What have you been telling people?" He held the phone away from his ear slightly. "What are you talking about, Beth Ann? Why is it?" he asked, his voice calm, even. "Don't play dumb with me. John just called me, asking about Chad's financial background. Sarah wants to pull out of the third location. And then I get a call from some reporter asking about corporate governance issues. You're destroying everything I've built." Her voice broke on the last words, dissolving into a strangled sob. "I'm just ensuring transparency, Beth Ann," Hank replied, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Like a safety audit. If there are risks, they need to be identified. If there are discrepancies, they need to be addressed." He was using her own business jargon against her, reflecting her words back with a cold, unforgiving logic. The pressure mounted on Beth Ann and Chad. Their professional world, once seemingly impervious, began to visibly shake. Clients, hearing the whispers, seeing the nervous glances, started to express concerns about the stability of the gym. A slight but noticeable drop in memberships began to appear in the daily reports. Chad, charismatic as he was, found himself constantly on the defensive, forced to justify his ambitious vision to increasingly skeptical partners who now saw him not as a savior but as a potential liability. Hank felt a grim satisfaction. He was watching the system he had detected begin to fail, not with a bang, but with a slow, controlled leak. It was a precise, measured retribution, each action a consequence of their choices. The anonymous tip Hank sent led directly to a local newspaper expose on Body Sculpt's leadership. The article subtly hinted at significant financial improprieties and an increasingly unprofessional work environment. Investors, alarmed by the report, immediately demanded an emergency board meeting, putting Beth Ann and Chad squarely on the defensive. Hank ensured his lawyer, Earl, possessed every piece of meticulously gathered evidence for the impending divorce proceedings. The full, shocking extent of Chad's LLC and the secretly diverted funds came to light during subsequent internal audits. Beth Ann's once pristine professional reputation in the community was now severely and publicly tarnished. Chad's past employment history, unearthed by Hank's persistent digging, revealed a clear pattern of quick, unexplained exits from previous roles. The board, reacting decisively, moved to freeze Chad's assets within Body Sculpt and initiated a full reassessment of his position. Beth Ann, now desperate, attempted to negotiate with Hank, pleading for a quiet, discreet divorce settlement. "Don't you care about what this does to me?" she pleaded, her voice cracking with desperation. Hank retorted, his voice cold and unwavering. "You didn't care what it did to us, Beth Ann." He adamantly refused to back down, insisting on a full accounting of all assets and complete compensation for his past investments. Body Sculpt faced a sharp financial downturn, putting its ambitious expansion plans into immediate jeopardy. The infamous Madison Hotel keycard became a powerful, public symbol of her betrayal, explicitly cited in the divorce filing. Chad, seeing the writing on the wall, brazenly attempted to distance himself from the financial mess, shifting all blame onto Beth Ann. Laura Jensen, the business reporter from the Midwest Ledger, was tenacious. Her expose hit the stands 3 weeks later, a front-page article complete with a grainy photo of Beth Ann and Chad at the second gym's opening. The headline read, "Body Sculpt's Rapid Expansion Under Scrutiny, Financial Mismanagement and Questionable Partnerships Hinted." And it didn't explicitly mention the affair, but it alluded to undisclosed relationships and an unprofessional work environment leading to potential conflicts of interest. The article was a fuse. Within hours, the phone calls to Body Sculpt became a torrent. Investors, already uneasy from Hank's earlier whispers, now demanded an emergency board meeting. Beth Ann and Chad found themselves squarely on the defensive, scrambling to explain the irregularities Jensen had so carefully highlighted. The internal audits that followed, prompted by the board's panic, quickly exposed the full extent of Chad's LLC, Peak Performance Consulting Group, and the substantial, unjustified consulting fees paid to it. They also uncovered the extent of Beth Ann's diversion of funds from their joint accounts. Hank, meanwhile, was preparing his own offensive. He had handed Earl his complete dossier, a meticulously organized collection of bank statements, emails, social media screenshots, and the original loan agreements. The Madison Hotel key card, now a symbol of her betrayal, was explicitly cited as evidence in the divorce filing Earl submitted. Beth Ann's reputation, built on years of hard work and community involvement, crumbled. The whispers now turned to open gossip. Chad's past employment history, unearthed by Hank's private investigator, painted a damning picture. A pattern of quick exits from previous fitness companies, often leaving behind a trail of disgruntled investors or financial discrepancies. It became clear he was a professional opportunist, and Beth Ann had walked right into his trap. At the emergency board meeting, the investors were furious. The board moved swiftly to freeze Chad's assets within Body Sculpt. They began a full reassessment of his position, questioning his integrity and his entire vision. The expansion plans, once so ambitious, were immediately halted, throwing the company into a financial downturn. New memberships plummeted, and existing clients, unsettled by the bad press, began to cancel. Days later, Beth Ann called Hank. Her voice was thin, desperate. "Hank, please. This is getting out of control. Don't you care about what this does to me, my business, my reputation?" She was pleading, a tone he hadn't heard from her in years. She offered to settle, to give him more than his fair share in a quiet divorce. "You didn't care what it did to us, Beth Ann," he retorted, his voice flat, devoid of any warmth. The words hung in the air, a cold, hard truth. He thought of her earlier defiance, her casual dismissal of their shared history. He remembered her face when she told him Chad made her feel alive. He wouldn't relent. He insisted on a full accounting of all their marital assets and complete compensation for every penny he had invested, directly and indirectly, in Body Sculpt. The legal battle commenced, cold and formal. Chad, seeing his carefully constructed empire crumbling and sensing a significant financial loss, attempted to distance himself from the entire mess. He started blaming Beth Ann, claiming she was the one who managed the books, that she was the one who made the questionable decisions. The man who made her feel alive was now throwing her under the bus. The divorce was finalized, awarding Hank a significant portion of Body Sculpt's assets. Beth Ann consequently lost control over her ambitious expansion plans and much of her ownership stake. Chad Anderson was formally pushed out of Body Sculpt, effectively ending his career in the city. The once thriving Body Sculpt chain now struggled immensely to regain any semblance of public trust. Hank swiftly sold his awarded portion of Body Sculpt for a fair price, severing all remaining ties. He meticulously moved out of the marital home, leaving behind painful memories and the phantom scent of betrayal. Hank established himself in a new, quieter apartment, settling into a solitary, predictable routine. He found himself reflecting often on the high cost of identifying risks before they become catastrophes. Despite his practical victory, the feeling was hollow. The profound emptiness of a broken home persisted. He continued observing people in everyday life, still spotting small deviations, but now with a deep, weary wisdom. Hank found a quiet solace in the rigorous predictability of his work at Axiom Chemical. He acknowledged the deep, irreversible wound, yet also recognized a quiet sense of moral closure. Life continued, irrevocably altered and heavier with the immeasurable weight of what had been lost. He slowly learned to live with the subtle hum of his new, solitary existence, filled with echoes of a life that once was. The divorce proceedings were finalized 6 months after Hank had walked out. It was a cold, formal affair, conducted mostly through lawyers. Earl, true to his nature, had been meticulous and unrelenting. Hank was awarded a significant portion of Body Sculpt's assets, including a substantial cash settlement from the business's operating funds and Beth Ann's share of their marital home. The judge, swayed by the documented financial fraud and Beth Ann's own contradictory statements, had ruled heavily in Hank's favor, deeming her actions a clear breach of fiduciary duty within the marital partnership. Beth Ann, stripped of much of her ownership and control, saw her ambitious expansion plans crumble. The third location, which had been halfway through its build-out, was abandoned, a concrete shell reflecting her ruined ambition. Body Sculpt, once a beacon of local success, was now a struggling chain, its name synonymous with scandal in the local community. The public trust, once so easily earned, was irrevocably shattered. Chad Anderson, unable to defend his financial dealings and with his tarnished reputation preceding him, was officially pushed out of Body Sculpt. His career in the city was effectively over. Hank heard through the grapevine that Chad had packed up and left town, heading for some unknown city, presumably to start his pattern of quick exits and dubious ventures anew. Hank, with no desire to be involved in the wreckage, swiftly sold his awarded portion of Body Sculpt. He found a buyer, another local fitness entrepreneur looking to expand, who offered a fair price for the remaining assets and what little goodwill was left. Hank cut all ties, the finality of the transaction feeling like a surgical severance. He moved out of the house they had built together, the one he had helped paint and maintain, the one that now carried the phantom scent of betrayal, a smell only he could detect. He packed his belongings into boxes, a methodical process that mirrored the dismantling of his marriage. There were no tears, no dramatic outbursts, just the quiet, heavy work of separation. He found a new apartment on the other side of town, smaller, quieter, with no shared history. It was a space unburdened by ghosts, a blank canvas for a solitary routine. He started going to bed earlier, waking up earlier, the days unfolding with a predictable rhythm that he found oddly comforting. His work as a safety engineer at Axiom Chemical, with its clear rules, defined risks, and logical solutions, became a solace. He often found himself reflecting on the cost of identifying risks before they become catastrophes, a phrase he used in his professional life. He had averted financial ruin, secured a semblance of justice, but the victory felt hollow. The emptiness of a broken home, the absence of a shared future remained. He still observed people in everyday life, still spotted the small deviations, the subtle tells, but now it was with a weary wisdom, a quiet understanding of human fallibility. He acknowledged the deep wound, the irreversible damage, but also a quiet sense of moral closure. He had faced the betrayal head-on, unraveled the deception, and systematically sought accountability. Life went on, but it was forever altered, heavier with the weight of what had been lost, yet lighter too, without the burden of deceit. He learned to live with the quiet hum of his new solitary existence, The echoes of a life that once was fading, replaced by the stark, unvarnished reality of what remained. Word count. The days blurred into weeks, then months. Hank continued his work at Axiom Chemical, the familiar rhythm of inspections and reports a steady anchor in his quiet life. He occasionally saw Beth Ann's name in the local paper, a small mention of body sculpt struggling, or her appearance at a community event, her once bright smile now strained. He felt no triumph, no residual anger, just a vast, encompassing emptiness, a landscape cleared by fire. He had survived the catastrophe, salvaged what he could, but the reconstruction was internal, slow and private. The lessons were etched deep, the understanding of human capacity for both love and deceit, a heavy mantle. He was a man who had seen the hidden risks, addressed them, and now lived with the quiet hum of his new, solitary existence, the echoes of a life that once was. The divorce finalized. Hank received a significant share of Body Sculpt's assets, the business he'd once helped launch. Beth Ann lost much of her ownership, her ambitious expansion plans now dead in the water. Chad Anderson, his reputation in the city effectively over, simply vanished, another ghost leaving town. Body Sculpt, once a beacon of local success, limped along, struggling to regain any public trust. Hank, with no desire to witness its slow decline, sold his portion for a fair price, severing all remaining ties. He moved into a new, smaller apartment, leaving the marital home behind, along with the phantom scent of betrayal. He found a stark, measured solace in the rigorous predictability of his work at Axiom Chemical, a calm routine for a man who identified risks before they became catastrophes. The practical victory felt hollow, though. The vast emptiness where a home once stood remained. He still observed people, noted small deviations, but now with a weary wisdom. The wound was deep, the damage irreversible. Yet there was a quiet sense of moral closure. Life went on, forever altered, heavier with loss, but also lighter without the burden of deceit. He learned to live with the quiet hum of his solitary existence, the echoes of a life that once was fading into the new reality.